For some perspective on what this failure means and what could come next, we turn to our old friend. He's now an MSNBC contributor, Charlie Sykes, joining us live from the newsroom. Charlie, since that piece was filed, there's been tape with the president saying he blames Democrats that this bill could not get passed by Republicans who run every aspect of the government right now in Washington. How does he get from point A to point B there?
Yeah, well, that's somewhat predictable, but the reality is that the Republicans own this. This is something that they've had 7 years to work on. They control both houses of the of Congress, and as Paul Ryan admitted, look, it's a bumpy thing to go from being the opposition party, because that's kind of easy, to being the governing party. And today was a significant failure. It's a significant failure for the Trump presidency in his first 100 days. And unfortunately, it's a rather dramatic failure for Speaker Paul Ryan.
So the House Republicans said we need a Republican Senate to get a repeal and replace bill on the president's desk. They got that. They got it to the president, Obama. He vetoed it.
Right.
Now they have a Republican president. Why did they not have a plan in place for this day when they thought it would come? They had 7 years they could vote up or down on let's repeal and replace, but they never had the plan to back that up.
Well, they did have a plan, but they didn't have a plan that was going to convince the American public that it would actually work or that it would fix what's wrong with Obamacare. And there's a lot that is wrong with Obamacare, and unfortunately, I think they tried to move this way, way, way too fast. I certainly remember as a conservative talk show host criticizing Democrats for the way they were ramming through Obamacare. This was much more dramatic and much faster. And part of the problem is that, Republicans have never actually done this before, roll back a large domestic entitlement program. They were never able to roll back Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal. They weren't able to roll back much of the Great Society. So this was always going to be a heavy lift.
People like getting things, and it's hard to take those things away from them ultimately. All right, next up here, tax cuts. The president says that's what he wants to do next. Is there political capital in the Republican leadership in Congress and in the White House to spend on anything right now in Washington?
See, that is a great question, because first of all, a defeat like this is, in the first 100 days is almost unprecedented. So you lose the momentum. But secondly, one of the reasons they did health care first was in order to cut taxes to make it easier to pass the tax reform bill, because under, this is kind of wonky, but under the reconciliation, which requires only 51 votes in the Senate, you can't increase the deficit. So as Paul Ryan admitted a little while ago, this doesn't make tax reform impossible, but it makes it much, much more difficult. And I think that a defeat today just raises questions about whether or not Republicans have a governing philosophy and whether or not they have an effective governing majority. And that casts doubt over the entire agenda going forward.
We don't get the kind of time you get on cable news to talk these things out, so we have to end it there. Charlie Sykes, thank you so much.